After Roger Federer declined an invitation to play this year's Australian Open, organizers are working on a strategy to bring him back in 2024. The 20-time Grand Slam champion last played in Melbourne in 2020, but organizers had hoped to bring him to Melbourne Park as a special guest this month, as it would significantly increase the viewership, but apparently he had formally stopped his professional tennis career in September, and we don't blame him. So what are the other reasons behind Federer's not attending the Australian Open? Also, will Nick Kyrgios be participating in the Open? Let's take a closer look. First up, in quite surprising news, Roger Federer has declined his invitation to attend the upcoming Australian Open. Here's why. Following the Swiss Ace's retirement last year, Tennis Australia invited Roger Federer to attend this year's Australian Open. However, Federer withdrew, completely depriving the organizers of a major coup. Federer, who famously dominated tennis for 2 decades, but struggled with injuries and form, announced his retirement in 2022 and is currently taking it easy at home with his family. But officials from Tennis Australia asked the 20-time Grand Slam champion if he would be interested in participating in the 2023 Australian Open in some way during the Sporting Icons Farewell Tournament in September. However, Federer, now aged 41, has made it obvious he won't be traveling, even though he is still one of the most marketable and beloved players in all of sports. Since he declined the offer, Tennis Australia will try again to entice the tennis legend to Melbourne Park in 2024, but don't get your hopes up. Now, can you believe 20 years have passed since Federer won his maiden Grand Slam in Australia? He then went on to win the tournament 5 more times over the course of his career. Impressive, right? So why wouldn't he want to return? Well, Federer recently admitted that while he enjoyed visiting Australia, he considered the Australian Open a particularly tiring competition. According to Federer himself, the problem is that there are 300 players, 300 coaches, guests, and other participants at the Australian Open, and there always end up being so many people. Also, Federer topped the list of highest paid tennis players in 2022, despite playing very little and earning $90.7 million, surpassing boxer Canelo Alvarez and American quarterback Tom Brady. So he clearly doesn't need the paycheck. Hopefully he makes an appearance in 2024, but honestly, we should all just let the man live a relaxing life following his intense career, don't you think? Next up, is Australian tennis star Nick Kyrgios going to play in the Australian Open? Now, we know that Nick Kyrgios rarely fails to blow the roof off at the Australian Open, and whether you love him or hate him, he is a huge force to be reckoned with. There is genuine confidence that the 27-year-old might have a strong showing in his home tournament this year, because he played some of his best tennis last year. However, there are some concerns regarding his participation at Melbourne Park after his surprising and shocking withdrawal from the United Cup in December. Nick Kyrgios is currently scheduled to compete in the upcoming Australian Open. The Arena Showdown, an exhibition match between Kyrgios and Novak Djokovic, will take place at Melbourne Park on January 13th, before the Australian Open. The Grand Slam tournament, which begins on January 16th, will likely have the Australian star in good shape, but with Kyrgios, you never know what could happen at the last minute. After pulling out of Adelaide International 2 and the United Cup late last month, Kyrgios had previously blamed an ankle issue. He had previously stated, though, that he will put his recuperation first in order to compete in the Australian Open. Additionally, Kyrgios' manager, Daniel Horsfall, stated that the world number 22 had no doubt at all that he will compete in the Open. Now, Kyrgios fought a number of injuries throughout his successful 2022 season. Notably, he withdrew from the Japanese Open in October due to a knee injury, missing nearly 2 months of singles action. Another big question was why Kyrgios withdrew from the Adelaide International 2, in addition to the United Cup. Before the Australian Open, he had originally planned to use the occasion as his final preparation contest. The Australian tennis player's manager has responded to those questioning whether Kyrgios' injuries are legitimate. I hope they now realize the injury is legitimate, because a lot of people were angry when he withdrew from the United Cup. I wish more individuals would seek clarification before offering their opinions. Now, the Australian Open will begin on January 16th, and we cannot wait to see what Kyrgios pulls out of the bag this time. Finally, since we are on the topic of the Australian Open, here are some of the up-and-coming faces to watch out for at the upcoming Open. As a new season of Grand Slam competition gets underway, more players outside the top 10 strive to break through and make a name for themselves at the highest levels. The following week, they will get their first shot in 2023 at the Australian Open. First up, in no particular order, Ons Jabeur, Tunisia. As the highest-ranked African and Arab tennis player in WTA and ATP rankings history, this formidable athlete has already made history. Ons Jabeur, the #1 Tunisian player at 28, recently garnered praise from Nick Kyrgios, the #1 Australian player, who described her as a special player. Jabeur also joined Naomi Osaka's sports agency Evolve just this past week, which is a huge achievement and a sign of future major success. Next up, Iga Swiatek. Now, Iga Swiatek's dominance was tested during the French Open last year, but not by any of the seasoned, competent professionals she encountered, but rather by a newbie. Zheng briefly faced off against the best player in the world in the 4th round, showcasing her superior serve, big topspin forehand, and athleticism as she forced a 3rd set. Zheng made her maiden entry within the top 30 last year after finishing 2021 ranked 143. Zheng's ascent continues as China searches for a replacement for Li Na, its Australian Open champion from 2014. Another great player to watch, Alicia Parks. Parks stunned Maria Sakkari with 59 winners to advance to the WTA Ostrava quarterfinals. A round ago, Parks defeated former world #1 Karolina Pliskova. In the US Open 2021 qualifying round, the athletic, 185-centimeter tall player, 21, equaled the world record for the fastest women's serve when she fired one down at 207.6 kilometers per hour. Parks started 2022 outside the top 200, but steadily increased after success on the ITF circuit. Then followed the run in Ostrava, where she was defeated in 2 close sets by eventual champion Barbara Krejcikova. She rose from 150 to 75 in the world in just 3 weeks at the end of the season, after winning back-to-back WTA 125K titles in Andorra and Angers. Despite being #1 in qualifying and starting her season on a 10-match winning streak, she almost missed the AO 2023 main draw entry cutoff. Next, Ben Shelton. Shelton was one of the hundreds of athletes who chose to attend college over the usual path of becoming a professional 1 year ago. Shelton led the Gators to their first NCAA championship final while competing under the guidance of his father, Brian, the head coach of the University of Florida, and then he won the championship alone. At age 20, it was time to graduate from college and enter the workforce. Excellent outcomes have been obtained. Since May, Shelton has defeated 3 rivals, advanced to 3 additional finals, and seen his rating soar from 548 to 92. He arrives in Melbourne with the anticipation building for his first Grand Slam competition outside the US Open. Tim van Rijthoven is also a player to keep your eye on this year. Here's why. The 25-year-old Dutchman, once a bright junior, had spent years competing on the Challenger and Future circuits, but his year-end ranking had remained the same as number 250. All of that changed in 2022 when he competed and won his hometown 's-Hertogenbosch ATP tournament. Van Rijthoven had a fantastic week on grass. Despite being a 205th ranked wildcard at the time, he defeated Taylor Fritz, Felix Auger Aliassime and Daniil Medvedev. Following that, he advanced to the 4th round of Wimbledon, when Novak Djokovic eventually ended his 8-match winning streak, but only after a 4-set struggle on center court. Later, he achieved victory at the US Open. He started 2022 ranked 261st, reached his highest position of 101st, and is presently ranked 111. Next, Fernando Verdasco. Due to his spectacular journey to the 2009 semifinals, where Rafael Nadal defeated him in one of the tournament's greatest ever battles, Verdasco will always be linked to the Australian Open. The former world number 7 is a 39-year-old tour veteran who went pro in 2001. Even though he has struggled with injuries in the last 2 seasons, going 44 to 52, he has still managed to raise his ranking from outside the top 200 to world number 108 by the middle of 2022. Despite missing the previous 2 Australian Opens, Verdasco made it to the 3rd round on his most recent 2 trips in 2019 and 2020. He will pose a severe threat in the qualifying stages due to his experience in Australia and his love of the terrain. Another young performer who is taking the world by storm, Benoit Paire. Paire, a former number 18 in the world, has been in the 2nd week of competition at 3 of the 4 majors. Despite this, the 33-year-old is currently placed at number 179, a position he has not held on the rankings list since 2010. This is despite slogging through 2 pandemic-affected seasons. Paire will compete in the Grand Slam qualifying rounds of the Australian Open in 2023 for the first time in 8 years. Still, he comes into the competition with the memories of a stunning run to the 3rd round at Melbourne Park a year earlier, which featured an upset of Grigor Dimitrov. He also experienced a surge in performance during the final 3 months of the season, entering 2023 with more vigor. Fans will get the opportunity to observe the gifted Frenchman in action up close during AO qualification. He is one of the sport's most distinctive characters and creative shot makers. And last but not least, Lorenzo Musetti. Musetti's talent has been well known since his junior years, and his professional career has only served to highlight it. Musetti has made a great comeback, winning an ATP 500 event in Hamburg last year. He is equipped with a violent topspin forehand, a lovely single-hander, and a huge variety of shots. He moved up to number 19 in the world after the first week of this season, and despite the faster Melbourne courts not being to his taste, his game is still flowing well. Unfortunately, guys, that is all the time we had for today. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and as always, thanks for watching.